Have you ever wondered whether you might not be the person you think you are? That your carefully constructed identity may be nothing more than a reflection of the expectations of others? An echo of what society demands from you? This thought is uncomfortable, but it may be the most important truth you will hear today. We live in a time in which it is most difficult to be authentic. Why? Because we are flooded minute by minute with messages telling us how to think, what to wear, how to behave, and even how to feel. It is as if we were trapped in a huge theater playing roles we did not choose. But what happens when the actor begins to confuse himself with the role? When the mask we wear for the world clings so tightly to our skin that we forget what we looked like before we put it on. This is the silent tragedy of our time. Ralph Waldo Emerson captured this with frightening clarity in his brilliant essay Self-Reliance. He warned us, if we follow the expectations of other people, we lose parts of ourselves. We have become like sand dunes, fragile, changeable, shaped by the wind. And this is where fear begins. For while we seek external validation, whether through followers on social media, compliments at work, or the approving glance of strangers, something deeper within us shatters. It is as if grain by grain we erase the solid mountain we were meant to be. Emerson believed that each of us was born to be this mountain, a steadfast force of identity and purpose. But the reality we live in today is the opposite of that. The question is, why do we do this? Why do we allow the world to shape us? The answer is uncomfortably simple. We do it because it is easier, because it hurts to resist external expectations. Being true to oneself often means enduring hostile looks, asking sharp questions, and even isolating oneself. Jung, the psychologist who revolutionized our understanding of the unconscious, described this phenomenon as the emergence of the shadow. The shadow is the part of us we reject and hide because we fear it might be unacceptable to others. But ignoring the shadow comes at a price. The more we flee from it, the quieter and more insidious it becomes. It is this shadow that whispers to us that we are not good enough, that we must adapt to external expectations in order to be loved, accepted, and acknowledged. And the result, we become strangers to ourselves. The simplest question, who am I, becomes the most terrifying of all, because deep inside we know we have no answer. Emerson regarded this crisis as a form of living death. He believed that when we seek the approval of the world, we lose the ability to hear the only voice that truly matters, our own. Think about it. How often have you made a decision because you knew in your heart that it was the right one, but held back because you feared the judgment of others? Perhaps it was a career you wanted to pursue, but abandoned because it did not seem practical, or an opinion you had but swallowed because you feared criticism. With each such moment, a small part of you disappeared, and what remains in the end? This is not a rhetorical question. What truly remains when we spend our lives adapting to the world? Emerson answers, emptiness. He describes it as a life that accumulates knowledge, beliefs, and experiences, but dies with a hole where our soul should have been. We lose our sense of who we are. We become strangers to ourselves. But perhaps there is a way out. Emerson believed there was. He said that although it is difficult to recover oneself, it is a possible journey. And the first step is recognizing that the strength we seek outside has always been within us. He called this strength self-reliance, an absolute trust in our own intuition, in our own soul. It is an idea as powerful as it is revolutionary. For Emerson, true greatness does not lie in pleasing others, but in listening to and acting upon our inner voice. And yet, this is not as easy as it sounds. There are dangers on this journey. Jung warns us to achieve this authenticity. We must first confront the shadow, the thing we fear to discover about ourselves. For until we do, we remain trapped in the cycle of adapting to the world instead of shaping it into what we truly are. The tragedy of many lives is that we never face this shadow. We constantly run from it and distract ourselves with the small rewards of conformity. A compliment here, a promotion there, but the cost is terrible. Emerson said that the world rewards those who conform with rusty coins. It gives us temporary approval, but steals something far more valuable, our essence. And here lies the real dilemma. How can we fight something so deeply rooted? How can we resist forces that have shaped us since birth? According to Emerson, the answer begins with a simple act of courage, looking inward. Jung would agree. He would say that the journey to authenticity begins with the courage to recognize that our shadow is not an enemy, but a guide. So what would it be like to live without masks, without the need to please others? For Emerson, this would be the freest and most powerful life we can imagine. But he also knew that this freedom has its price. Being authentic often means being misunderstood. It means confronting judgmental looks and moments of loneliness. But he believed that this loneliness is temporary, while the peace that comes from staying true to oneself is eternal. And this brings us to the final question of this section. Are we ready to pay this price? Are we ready to stop being sand dunes and begin rebuilding our mountains? Or will we continue to hide and fear what we will find when we look inward? Emerson believes the answer is within reach for all of us. Jungu for both authenticity is a choice, an act of courage that not only redefines who we are, but also how we live. The question is, are you ready to make that choice? If Emerson's idea of inner genius is a sword that can cut the chains of conformity, how can we sharpen it? And is this sword enough to confront the forces that insist on shaping us? The answer may surprise you. Have you ever felt that inexplicable spark? A flash of intuition that seemed to shout exactly what you should do? Perhaps it was a decision at work, a life choice, or even a small change in everyday life. For a brief moment, everything seemed to make sense, but then you hesitated, doubted yourself, let outside voices take over and extinguish the inner light. Ralph Waldo Emerson called this the inner genius and believed that listening to this voice is the key to an authentic life. Think of it as an inner guide that is unique to each of us. Emerson believed that this genius not only leads us to our true path, but also connects us to something greater, something that goes beyond what we can measure or logically explain. He said to believe in your own idea, to believe that what is true for you in your innermost heart is true for all people that is genius. But here is the problem. Most of us don't believe it. We don't trust this voice, but rely instead on systems, on the opinions of others, and on parts that seem safe. Carl Jung offered a complementary and equally powerful perspective. He said that when we ignore this inner genius, the part of us that goes unheard grows, the shadow, and the larger it becomes, the more disconnected, frustrated, and sometimes even paralyzed we feel. It is as if there is a silent battle within us, the genius against the shadow. One fights to lead us forward, while the other tries to pull us back and nourish our fears and insecurities. This inner battle can be seen in countless large and small stories. Consider the case of Vincent van Gogh. For most of his life, he was mocked, rejected, and ignored. The people around him, including his own family, understood neither his art nor his decisions. The world told him to give up and pursue something more practical. But Van Gogh listened to his inner genius, that insistent voice that drove him to create masterpieces that are admired all over the world today. He paid a high price for it: isolation, poverty, emotional suffering. But his authenticity left us an imperishable legacy. Now, think of your own daily life. How often have you felt compelled to do something that seemed right, but decided against it because someone said it was impractical? Maybe it was a business idea, a career change, or even a simple decision like defending an unpopular opinion in a conversation. Although these moments are small, they reflect a larger struggle between who you truly are and what the world expects of you. Emerson urges us to stop running from this struggle and instead embrace our genius. But how do we do that? He suggests that we must listen to our instincts and act on them even when the world is against us. He believed that our intuition is a form of wisdom that transcends time and logic. Jung reinforces this idea, stating that intuition is a direct connection with our unconscious, a source of profound truths that we often ignore in the name of rationality. Following this intuition is for Emerson like wielding a sword. With this metaphor, he describes the strength and precision that authentic action brings. But he also warns, every time we confront the world, whether by questioning social norms, challenging authorities, or simply going our own way, this sword becomes thinner. According to him, the world is like a stone that tries to dull our blade and force us to become adapted, predictable, obedient, and safe. A contemporary example can illustrate this. Think of someone like Elon Musk. Despite the controversies, he is a clear example of someone who follows his intuition and often ignores overwhelming criticism. When Musk decided to found SpaceX, he was mocked. Experts said it was impossible to compete with aerospace giants. Today, SpaceX is a leader in its field and is redefining what we consider possible. Musk sharpened his sword against immense resistance, and the result was an extraordinary breakthrough. But this journey is not reserved only for artists or entrepreneurs. It is present in every decision we make, no matter how trivial it may seem. Imagine, for example, a student who is pressured by his family to choose a traditional profession. Deep in his heart, he feels he should study music, but external expectations weigh more. He chooses something safe. Years later, he feels empty and disconnected because the decision was not made by his genius, but by the voices around him. Emerson would say that this choice does not have to be final. He believed that the genius within us never disappears. The further we move away from it, the harder it becomes to hear it. Jung would agree and suggest that it is possible to reconnect with this voice, but it requires courage to face the shadow, to face the decisions we have made out of fear, doubt, or conformity. And here lies the greatest challenge. When we listen to our genius and act accordingly, we often find ourselves at odds with the world. Emerson knew this. He said, "To be great is to be misunderstood." Jung in turn explained that authentic growth requires confronting internal and external conflicts. Both recognize that in order to remain true to ourselves, we must be willing to be different, questioned, and rejected. That is frightening, but also liberating. Think of the last time you did something that truly reflected who you are. Perhaps it was something small, such as defending an idea in a meeting or choosing a lifestyle that aligns with your values. How did you feel? It was probably a mixture of fear and excitement. That is genius at work. And the more often we hear this voice, the stronger it becomes. Ison's message is clear. We are not copies. We are originals. But this originality thrives only when we nurture it, when we stop paying attention to what others do and start trusting our own ideas, feelings, and intuitions. Jung would say that when we do this, we integrate the shadow and transform it from a silent enemy into a powerful ally. So what holds us back? For many, it is the fear of failure. The world teaches us that it is shameful to make mistakes and that we must cling to what is safe and predictable. But Emerson rejects this idea. He believed that every mistake is an opportunity to learn, a chance to sharpen our sword. He wrote, "Man is great only because he dares to make mistakes and learn from them." In the end, the question remains, are you ready to listen to your own voice even when the world says you are wrong? Are you ready to take up your sword and face the stones that try to dull it? Emerson and Jung believe that this is the only way to live an authentic life full of meaning and purpose. But if the world has constantly conspired against our uniqueness, How can we resist its forces? The answer may lie in understanding how society shapes us and how we can break these chains. Why is it so difficult to be oneself in a world that seems to conspire against individuality? This seemingly simple and direct question reveals one of the greatest struggles of human existence. From the moment we are born, we are shaped by external forces, family expectations, cultural norms, behavioral patterns. It does not take long to realize that society does not value those who deviate from the established path. What, however, few ask, is who is interested in this control. Ralph Waldo Emerson called this the conspiracy of society against the individual. He believed that society functions like a kind of joint stock company in which everyone gives up their freedom in exchange for security. We do this without noticing. We adopt the opinions of others. We follow trends. We adapt to the labels they give us. And in doing so, we sacrifice something fundamental, our essence. Jung complements this idea by describing the concept of the persona, the mask with which we adapt to the world. The persona is useful. It helps us navigate social challenges. But when we identify too much with it, we begin to believe that the mask is who we really are. This is how the system works. The more we identify with the persona, the less we question the imposed rules. But here is the dilemma. If the mask is accepted, what happens to the face behind it? Think of the last time you suppressed an opinion or hid a part of yourself to avoid conflict. It may have been something small, such as agreeing with a group even though you disagreed, or something bigger, such as pursuing a career that does not correspond to your true interests. Every time we do this, the Emerson voice within us becomes weaker, and the world rewards this silence. Predictability is pleasant for others, but deadly for our authenticity. But why does society place such value on conformity? The answer may lie in fear. Singularity challenges the status quo. When someone decides to live authentically, it forces the people around them to question their own decisions. It is easier to label those who deviate as rebellious or reckless than to admit that they might be right. Emerson warned, "The world hates what is new because it fears what it does not understand, and this does not happen only on a personal level." Popular culture is a blatant example. How many artists, innovators, or thinkers were only celebrated after their ideas were watered down and adapted to norms? Think of figures like Nikola Tesla, whose revolutionary inventions were ignored for years, or of Frida Kahlo, whose instinctive and unique art was downplayed in her time because it fell outside the norm. For society, the new is uncomfortable, and the comfortable sells. Now consider what that means for you. How often have you felt that you had to conform in order to be accepted? Perhaps it is something as simple as wearing a certain outfit to fit into a group, or something as profound as adopting beliefs that do not align with your true feelings. The question is, how much of yourself are you willing to sacrifice? And what, perhaps even more importantly, have you already lost so much of that, you can no longer measure what is missing? Society has tools to reinforce conformity. Social networks, for example, create bubbles in which instant approval in the form of likes and comments becomes addictive. The more you adapt to expectations, the greater the reward. But there is an invisible price. Every post, carefully tailored to your needs, steals a part of your spontaneity. And what remains when the online you consumes the real you? Emerson described this as a gradual death. He believed that the true tragedy of conformity lies not only in the loss of originality, but also in the loss of purpose. Carl Jung would agree and suggest that this separation creates an inner void, a feeling of constant dissatisfaction that we often mistake for failure. But the truth is different. It is not that we fail to meet the expectations of the world. It is simply that these expectations should never have defined us. It is, however, not easy to break this cycle. Those who choose to question norms encounter resistance. You will be questioned, mocked, perhaps even isolated. Emerson knew this and still insisted that authenticity was worth the price. He said that the true triumph of life lies in being misunderstood, for it means that you are living according to your own truth and not according to the truth of others. And here's a twist. Does the world really hate singularity, or is it afraid of what it represents? When someone dares to be authentic, it is as if they are illuminating the collective shadow of society, the part everyone suppresses because they are afraid of facing it. Jung believed that the only way to heal this shadow was to integrate it both on an individual and collective level. This means that by living authentically, you not only change your own life, but also challenge the system that upholds conformity. But how is that done? How can we resist forces that seem so much greater than we are? Emerson suggests that the answer lies in a small act of rebellion, trusting yourself. He reminds us that we do not need external validation to be whole. Jung goes even further, stating that by confronting and accepting our shadow, we gain access to an inner strength that is unshakable. Trusting yourself is not just an abstract idea. It is something that manifests in everyday decisions. Imagine someone who, instead of following the trend of a secure career, decides to open a small cafe because it reflects who they truly are. Or the person who, instead of hiding their interests out of fear of judgment, shares their passion with the world. These acts, however small they may seem, are revolutions. They not only affirm who we are, but also inspire others to do the same. Still, we should not deceive ourselves. The world will continue trying to shape us. It offers us material and social rewards to keep us in line. Yet Emerson asks us, are these rewards truly worth their price? Do we gain something, or do we only lose when we trade our authenticity for acceptance? In the end, the central question remains. Are you willing to challenge the system even knowing that it may be uncomfortable? Or will you continue sacrificing parts of yourself to please a world that will never be satisfied? But what happens when we let go of the need to please others? Do we become free, or do we simply face a new kind of prison? The answer to this question could change everything. Have you ever considered how dependent we are on the idea of consistency? From a young age, we are taught that it is a virtue to remain loyal to our decisions and ideas. Be consistent, they say. Don't change your mind. Don't waver. Stay firm. But what if this pursuit of consistency is not a test of character, but an invisible prison? Ralph Waldo Emerson believed so. For him, consistency was the hobgoblin of little minds, a trap that prevents us from growing and discovering who we truly are. Think of the last time you felt that something in your life needed to change. Perhaps it was a relationship, a job, or even a belief that no longer made sense. Yet, just as you considered changing, an inner or outer voice said, "But you've always been this way. You can't just walk away." Now, that is the weight of consistency. It forces us to stay on a path even when that path leads nowhere. And this is not a new struggle. It is a dilemma that spans all of human history. Consider the case of Galileo Galilei. At a time when the Church insisted that the sun revolved around the earth, Galileo dared to say otherwise. He had evidence, but he faced a cruel choice: abandon his findings or be condemned. The Church, as guardian of consistent truths, could not allow him to question what was considered absolute. Galileo publicly recanted, but his ideas, buried for a time, later proved to be undeniable scientific truths. Consistency in this case was used as a weapon to silence progress, and the truth is that it continues to be used this way today. How often do we avoid change because we fear the judgment of those around us? How often have we heard someone say, "But didn't you used to think differently?" Society loves pointing out inconsistencies in others, as if changing one's mind or abandoning an old belief were signs of weakness. Jung had a fascinating perspective on this. He believed that in order to grow, we must let go of parts of ourselves, our ideas, our beliefs, even our identity. For Jung, Life was like a series of concentric circles. As we move from one circle to the next, we leave something behind. That can be frightening because it requires us to release what once defined us. But it is also liberating because it allows us to evolve. Ralph Waldo Emerson described this brilliantly. He said, "We should not worry about the shadow our body casts on the wall. The shadow is consistency. It follows our movements, but does not define who we are." Emerson believed that true consistency is not found in our past actions, but in the direction in which we are moving. It is like sailing a boat. Up close, the path may appear irregular, full of curves and detours. But from afar, you can see that it is a straight line toward the goal. So when we ask ourselves why we cling so tightly to consistency, even though it often holds us back, the answer may lie not in our strength, but in our fear. Change means leaving the familiar landscape of our inner and outer life. It means admitting that we may have been wrong yesterday, and that wounds the ego. Yet Emerson and Jung would tell us that true greatness lies not in rigidity, but in the courage to begin again and again. For every person who has ever created something meaningful had to first shed the expectations of others and then their own. Growth is not a straight path. It is a rhythm of courage and doubt, a dance between the old and the new. Whoever tries to defend their past loses the future. Whoever is willing to surpass themselves creates a life that feels not like repetition, but like discovery. Perhaps this then is the conclusion we must reach. Authenticity is not a goal, but a decision we make again and again every morning, in every conversation, with every silent question that arises within us. It is the courage to take off the mask, embrace the shadow, and give our own voice more weight than the noise of the world. Emerson would say that by doing so, we not only reclaim ourselves, but also the ability to bring something original into the world. And Jung would add that this is the moment when personality is no longer made of adaptation, but of integrity. So the question is no longer whether the world allows us to be ourselves, but whether we finally allow it to ourselves.